CS437 Internet of Things, Lab 3 Enterprise IoT. First, I'm going to set up the network topology. This is the specified topology that I must build using Cisco Packet Tracer. Now my topology has 2 routers, 4 switches, and 5 PCs. I'm going to add this port to each router in order to connect them later. And switch 1 has 2 PCs, and then the rest of the switches only have 1 PC attached. Next, I'm going to set up the routers. And first, I'm going to set up the serial ports. I'm going to use some IP commands to add IP addresses for each router serial port and the subnet. And I will also be changing the clock rate. And it looks like I added the wrong cord to connect my routers, so I'm just going to use a serial DCE to add the clock rate. And next I'm going to do the same for router 2. I'm going to add an IP address for router 2 using the IP add. And in case like the clock rate command doesn't work here, you can always just manually change it. And what you input in the command center will be displayed in the portal. Next, I'm going to set up the static routing. So I will be routing to different IP addresses, and I will include the subnet and also the next hop. And that can be displayed here. And I'm going to do the same for the router 2. I'm using the IP route commands for this. So here I'm doing the same thing. Next, I'm going to set up the Ethernet ports. Each router has 2 Ethernet ports. For Ethernet port 00 in router 1, I added an IP address, and then I'm also adding an IP address for the Ethernet port 0/1. And you can see it displayed here. For router 2, I'm going to add an IP address for the Ethernet port 0/0. And I'm also using these commands to like turn it on. And next, I'm going to test and debug. So I tried sending packets between computers and they failed. So I realized that I forgot to update the IP addresses for the computers. So I'm just going to make sure that each computer has the subnet mask and gateway IP that matches the router, the side of the router that it's associated with. Now PC2 failed to send the packet. The third PC failed to send the packet. So I'm going to add the routing information from that side of the router. And then PC3 also failed to send or receive a packet. So I'm going to add the IP address of the Ethernet on the side of the router. Next, I'm going to improve the visualization of my topology by spacing everything out and labeling things. I also changed the name of the PC so that there could be PC1, PC2, PC3, PC4, and PC5 so that it can match how I named the routers and switches to avoid further confusion. So in test 1, I sent a message from router 1 to router 2 and then router 2 to router 1 and some packets between computers. And they're all showing successful at the bottom. And I'm starting a simulation so you can see the network traffic in action.
I want to ping PC5 from the PC1 terminal. So ping 10.2.2.130 and see what happens. It's received at PC5. And now the acknowledgement that PC5 received it is being sent back to the sender. Now I want PC4 to ping PC3. Ping 10.0.0.130. Now, it's okay for there to be some data loss the first time you ping, but then when you ping again, then there's 0% loss and all 4 have been sent and received. Now I want PC5 to ping PC2. Okay. Now PC5 is going to ping PC2. And then this is the ping box. In the Cisco Packet Tracer, I can send packets from point A to point B and see what is going on in the backend in real time in the simulation. Now I'm going to show what's happening in real time now. So I want to send a packet from router 1 to router 2. Successful. Now I want to send a packet from router 2 to router 1. Successful. Now I want to send a packet from PC1 to PC5. Successful. Now I want to do it backwards. PC5 to PC1. Successful. Now I want to see if the computers in the same LAN work and communicate with each other. They do. Now I want to see if computers in the different LANs or different switches under the same router, I want to see if they can communicate. Successful. Now I want to see if PC4 and PC5 can communicate. They're under the same router too, but they have different switches. PC4, PC5, they can successfully communicate. Now I want PC5 and PC4 to communicate. Successful. Now I want to see if PC3 and PC4 communicate. Successful. And then I want to see if PC5 and PC3 can communicate. Now I want to see if PC1 can send a message to router 2. Successful. Now I want to see if router 2 can communicate with PC3. Also successful. I want to see if router 1 can communicate with PC4. And finally, I want to see if PC5 can communicate with router. And now I want to see if PC5 can communicate with router 1. As you can see, my networks, they all work successfully. They can communicate with one another. And now that I've very quickly seen the successful status in the real time, I want to see the simulation.